So I am a grad student, and I study history. I go to a big giant state school in Florida, and I spend a lot of time for the past. I'm 30 years old now. About 27 years, 26 years or whatever, playing video games. And as I got into a university and got my undergraduate degree. I got my BA in history as well. I also took a lot of classics courses and studied ancient history was my specialty. But what I found is that I was really interested in sort of the intersections of theory and culture in all kinds of places without any distinctions between like high and low culture, like, not paying any, regard for the particularities of how people are supposed to consume something. Instead, I would just kind of like follow my ADHD wherever it would take me. And as a result, I got really invested in sort of theoretical understandings and investigations of just all the shit that I like. So it's stuff like professional wrestling and science fiction and like weird B movie films, especially sword and sandal, like low budget sword and sandal epics made in Italy in like the 1950s, like all of this sort of strange stuff. But video games more than maybe anything because I've been playing them for as long. I don't have, I don't know if any of the memories I have of childhood were before video games or after because they're so far back that they're fuzzy. Like I remember my dad got a really good deal on a Super Nintendo from a guy at the fire department that he was stationed at, and he brought that home, and we had the Super Mario All Stars collection, and then Donkey Kong Country, and I believe there's one other thing, but it was you always get a throwaway thing or whatever. Oh, actually, it wasn't a throwaway. It was an incredible game. It was that game Michael Jordan Chaos in the Windy City, where you play Michael Jordan, and it's like a sewer kind of like plat. It's a platforming game set in the sewers of Chicago, to where you like throw magical basketballs at like mummies and spiders and stuff.
Sounds pretty epic.
It's really hard and dumb, but it's very cool and funny now. Um, but and I just played the ever living shit out of those games over and over and over again. And ever since then, every single spare dollar and cent that I've had has been leveraged towards either books, records, or games. And over about half, I stopped playing video games almost altogether. Besides, I would replay the three Final Fantasy titles for PlayStation One or the first two generations of the Pokemon games on an emulator. But when I got to college, I kind of stopped, and for a number of reasons that aren't important. Um, but after I took a break from college for about 2 years and then went back, all of a sudden I was finding myself doing really well in like these sort of opportunities to maybe like go to grad school and be an academic, which is something that I kind of always wanted to do. And it's really fucking stressful. I also, no one in my family really goes to college. I come from a very working class family, so I was covering everything myself, paying for everything myself, and I had to make rent. So I worked like 50 hours a week and went to school full time for 2.5 years
Oh
to
man.
try and get my BA. And it wasn't the hardest thing in the world, I'm sure. And I did okay, but at the same time, slinging lattes and then, trying to make money in student government was hard. But what I found was that video games are just like there. I found a renaissance in my life. I had a PC. I don't remember why in the holy fuck I had a PC. I had extra money from something and my laptop broke, and I'm like, okay, I need to get something. I think it was that I found a deal on uh, like a PC that I could get from somebody. Yes, that's exactly what it was. And so I got it, and I had this desktop, and I'd always have like Macintoshes and stuff because I'm just looking for something that's easy to use. But I had this all of a sudden. I'm like, just realized that I have a desktop that can run fucking games, like real ones. So I went and I got Steam, and I didn't have a lot of money, so I went to the sales section instantly, and I'm like, I want something that's like beefy that I could never run on any of the shit ass computers we had growing up. I could only play StarCraft. That was like and Warcraft 3. Those are the only things that it would run. Um, and so I got it was on sale, Far Cry 3. I had never played a single Far Cry game. I didn't know anything about Far Cry. I like JRPGs, and I like strategy games, grand strategy games. I like city builders. I play everything. I like fighting games too, but like that stuff in platforming is more where I came from. But I played. I would go to work. I would go to class, and then I would go to the library and I would work on I was in the honors college, so I was doing a BA thesis, and so I would go and I work on that, and then I would go home and I would play the ever living shit out of that game for as long as I could keep my fucking eyes open, because it was just like I hadn't like touched anything new in like the newest console I had touched was a PS2. PS3 had been out, I think, for a couple of years at that point, and I had not seen one in person. I I didn't do a whole lot outside of go home, do homework, go to work, and go to school and sleep. But whole buddy, when I played that fucking game, and it's a pretty good game. It's a I want to hit the writers of it over the head with a copy of Edward Said's Orientalism. The stupid fuckers. It has horrible motifs in it, and it's very racist. But in terms of mechanics and in terms of environment, like it had some interesting stuff that I just hadn't seen. Like the last thing I touched was an Xbox 360. So um, I now, in my little spreadsheet for my budget for the week, had a percentage of your paycheck that's going towards video games, because holy shit, are you going to start playing games again? And the rest is absolute history. So fast forward now, I'm in the like last 2 months of my master's. Uh, I consider myself, unfortunately for everybody, and I apologize in advance, a theory kind of geek, and I've been a leftist since I was 16 in various tendencies. Now, I typically, when people ask me what are my sort of left wing views, I either say socialist, anti capitalist, certain context, Marxist, which is probably the most appropriate term out of all of those. And yeah, I'm married, and my husband's asleep. That's why all the ambience. And we have a dog. We have a dog and a cat, and I can introduce them to everybody. There they are. And yeah, I play guitar, and oh yeah, I fucking stream on Twitch too, and I make YouTube videos about video games and Marxism. It's my new thing, and I literally have another one coming out in about 24 hours ish, that I'm extremely excited for, and I'm gonna keep making not exclusively content about games, but the majority of the big essays on my channel are going to be having something to do with left-wing theory or philosophy, and whatever video game my fucking Patreon subscribers choose that month. I guess. Yeah. Anyways.
All right. Well, I got the. Well, I was gonna say, can we get an inside sneak peek? No, I'm just kidding. But what your video is about? But like I said, I watched.
You want the unlisted link for the intro? You can show it if you want.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we throw it. You throw it in there. I don't know if we can. Holly can drop it in there. Anyways, yeah. Don't worry about it. I'm kind of joking anyway. But yeah, we're definitely.
No worries.
Yeah, we'll definitely check it out either way. Yeah, I really like the kind of like well, obviously I make video games, so that's like my business. I should know something. I probably play a lot less games than the average person my age, unfortunately. Just because I'm so busy making them. But
it's opposite time, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it does take time. So what I do is I usually watch other people playing them, or I watch other people, like I watch other people's, like yours, essays about the games, and I see what that game is about, and I don't have to spend 700 hours on it. But anyway, yeah. So like like we talked before, and I was like, there's a lot to like dissect there, I think, but just like I actually, to be honest, I was kind of interested in like your experiences with the like, because I know you said you kind of said like a lot of your videos and a lot of your content is kind of like centered around video games, but it's kind of like dealing with like anti-capitalism, socialism. Obviously, these are like these are like this, like if there is anything, like if there was ever an election where this is like a referendum on that in America for sure. This is an election where there's two billionaires who are on the stage. One of them is like a legit, not like kind of like half-assed, like daddy gave me $1 million and then I kind of blew shit up and I want to be but this is like, you have Bloomberg up there, 64 billionaire, and then there's two actually in the last, and Howard Schultz threw in earlier. So like talking about capitalism in America, we're like this is, if there ever was a time to really get serious. Obviously, like some people are kind of think of it as a fringe thing, and I found it interesting where Bloomberg actually said at the debate, like we have two choices. There was capitalism, and we and that won because communism is like, that was basically Soviet Russia, and everybody starved, and they're all eating rats, and they all died, and that's why we don't do that anymore. But it's kind of like that guy didn't, like, he's not doing, I don't know, it's a quick question, like will he win out? But kind of like in terms of like trying to like deal with those topics right now, while video games are the most popular art, as far as I know, like the more people under the age of 40 are spending time playing video games than literally any other activity, including eating, sleeping. Like if you put eating, sleeping, and working, which is like, how do you like work? Everybody's working like 100 hours a week in America. How do you play games more than work? But apparently that's something that everybody's doing. So I don't know. There's a lot of places to take that, but what is your what like? I mean, you kind of mentioned like that games can be a good way to. I mean, it's kind of obvious, but I mean, maybe you can elaborate more, like how games can be a good way for people to move on in terms of their economic or move people in terms of their economic and political, move them toward the left or potentially towards the right. Obviously, Steve Bannon figured that one out, right? But I don't know. You can talk about what are your feelings on what the potential, outside of just like entertaining people and keeping them occupied while they're not, working 50 hours slinging coffee at Starbucks or whatever. What do you think about that? Yeah.
Oh, I think a lot of things. There's the reason why I'll give the short answer and the long answer, because the short answer I think is very helpful. The short answer is that the reason why we use video games to talk about anti-capitalism is because culture doesn't exist in a vacuum. And by that I mean culture does not exist separated from all these other sort of mechanisms of society, and including the social world and the economy and government and all of this stuff. So if we accept culture as something that exists in conversation with all of this other stuff, then we should use it to analyze all of this other stuff too. So that's the short of it. Now, where like all of the anti-capitalism and stuff comes into play is that I think video games are a useful thing to leverage in terms of persuasion, because there's a big problem that we have, particularly in the United States, in terms of basically, okay, I always give the really long version of this, but like I consider myself, in terms of like my theoretical work, I am trying in some ways to produce original theory as a leftist and someone who has familiarity with sort of a variety of sort of geographic left-wing tendencies. And so I'm just experimenting, really. But and culture is the thing that I study as a historian in like a formal academic setting. But I consider myself indebted to the work of Mark Fisher, probably more than just about anybody else, when it comes to the like original ideas that I'm working through. Outside of academia, I use other theorists and stuff, but I consider myself very much indebted to this idea that like capitalist realism has set in such an extraordinary way that like the only solutions that we have in front of us to even begin building the left, which is just completely vaporized in the 21st century. Like, let's just be honest. Like, it's building again, and that's really cool. But like, it's just like it has just been these cycles of now the newest weakest point in history, now the newest weakest point in history. And in the United States, such a uniquely libertarian conservative country, and one of the main uh sort of protagonists of the Cold War on the side of capitalism, historical memory, something that I spend a lot of time studying. This historical memory has set in and has created these discourses, these sort of ways and ideas that these ways we talk to each other, and these ideas that we exchange and we accept, sort of, or that we change and that we send back or what have you. Anyways, um, there's this idea that, like, according to either Frederick Jameson or Slavoj Zizek, depending on who you ask, Mark Fisher gets the idea of capitalist realism borrowed from a quotation from either one of these people, that it's easier to imagine the end of the world than it is to imagine the end of capitalism. And I think that's patently true. It's in reference, Mark Fisher's little book, Capitalist Realism, Is There No Alternative? It's a little slim book that is a quick read, but not an easy read. I would warn people, and that I hope you approach it anyways, but just with care. Read about Mark Fisher before you read the book itself. Read what capitalist realism means first, then get into it. Anyways, I'm being a teacher. What is most significant to me about this is that in the culture that we consume, we can see evidence of this, like, sort of limited imagination. We can sort of criticize things that we hate or things that we even love. I spend a lot of time criticizing things, or being critical toward things that I very much enjoyed playing. For example, the video, and we can talk about it, the video about the Outer Worlds. I didn't play a lot of games last year because I was really busy, but out of the ones that I did play, if I had to pick a favorite, it would probably be Outer Worlds. It was, I really like Fallout. I really like the first two games. I really like New Vegas. This is space Fallout. However, when I decided I wanted my first video game video to be about it, I spontaneously made that video in like 2 or 3 days. I wrote the whole thing in a day, and then I filmed it in another day, and I edited it in another day because I just decided to. I was procrastinating, I think, and I'm like, I've been wanting to make content about video games for a while, but for some reason I thought I shouldn't. I needed to make it about history. But now I'm just doing whatever I want, and it's been much better. But anyways, what I found in that game is that when I approached it critically, even though I enjoyed it so much, I'm like, the imagination of this game is limited in a way that is kind of a fucking bummer. Like, it, it made me think of another sort of section of theory that I use quite a bit, which is literary criticism. And it made me think about the ways in which narrative and like central protagonist characters can be evidence of sort of a limited literary imagination, and how that manifests itself in video games. This is all to say that, like, video games, as you were saying, is within the movie industry. Like, if the movie industry was the big thing, well, it's gaming now. It's always I'm someone who's of an age to where I remember it when it was niche, and then I watched it in front of me become mainstream, and it's still a little crazy to me, but I remember when it was just more of a niche hobby, when it was something that you kind of got goofed on for a little bit, which I did, of course. And it follows these patterns of culture that I think, first of all, necessitates us to engage with it in some way, shape, or form. And two, as you said before, if I had to make an ideal situation for myself, it would be in a position to where I can spend time on the internet teaching and talking about video games and Marxism. And so, of course, inevitably, now I'm on YouTube and Twitch. So anyways, capitalist realism is just, I see it as as actually a theoretical jumping off point, and I see Mark Fisher as, like, sort of creating his own sort of theoretical framework or mode from which other people can put forward. And so I'm going to basically in my spare time between the academic stuff I do, which is I write about like public history and contemporary Europe, in depictions of the ancient world and stuff like that, and like monuments and stuff. I'm gonna write about fucking capitalist realism in video games, and make videos on the internet because it's important. And I guess I'm sorry, I'm rambling a lot, but very, very quickly, the whole reason why I think it's actually important is one, because I do a lot of in real life labor organizing with the IWW. It's a big part of my life. But what I've encountered in years and years of doing all kinds of organizing in various groups on the left is that a lot of people just don't have the capacity to just like imagine anything except for the gigantic pile of dog shit that we have in front of us. And as someone who worked a bazillion jobs for basically minimum wage, if not less than $1 over minimum wage for my entire life, and how everyone told me that I need to go to college and I need to get the degree, and then if I just put my head down and if I just work my ass off and pull myself up by my bootstraps, I will make it. And I did everything that everyone fucking told me to do. And where did it get me? Now I have a bachelor's degree, and sure, I've had some decent jobs, and sure, I'm about to get a master's degree, but I'm buried in student loan debt. For the past 5 years, I've had health insurance for one of them. Like, basically, like for most of my adult life, I lived not just paycheck to paycheck, but paycheck to one half of the next paycheck, and I just would spend 2 weeks of every single month trying to figure out how the fuck I was going to pay for my phone so I could actually call and like get texts and calls about new shifts at work. The economics of my life very, very dramatically have affected not just my sort of, my role as a trade union organizer, but also in the way that I engage with culture. I see it all as in this matrix that we need to just sort of work with. End of speech.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. That's yeah, there's a lot there, but I think like definitely the concept of like capitalist realism. I mean, if you don't know, I mean, I don't know, you might not watch all these things, but I just scream at people for like hours about basically those topics and adjacent ones. So it's not don't feel bad about going on the soapbox and ranting. That's like I literally call myself the neural ranter. I'm like the neuromancer. I'm the neuromancer. So it's all good.
So Twitch is for, right?
Yeah, that's what Twitch is for. But I use my living room. I go to my vote, my ballot, and I just rant into the ballot. I'm like, fuck all y'all. No, like, I ranted Thanksgiving dinner and I alienate all my family. Anyways,
no one will call me anymore.
Yeah, it's great. Well, not the boomers anyway. But yeah, anyways, I think that like definitely like that's a topic that obviously like we talked before about this, so like that's something like definitely like I could definitely relate to that, like just as somebody somebody who was like under the age of 40, it just, especially in a place like America. I mean, there's a few places on the earth maybe where you're not turning socialist and you're not having that experience of just being ground. Like I'm looking at the statistics like all the time, and like it's like what was it recently, like San Francisco, even in San Francisco, like this is something I say is like the facade of like the capitalist realism that Mark Fisher talks about, this kind of like, this is all that there is. We have the end of history, like comment like Bloomberg echoing Cold War era propaganda said, this is the end of communism, 1989, we're done. It's democratic, liberal capitalism. That's all we have, forever and ever. Amen. So let's just let's have fun and let's party. All three of us, rich, 164 billionaire white guys. Let's party. Why isn't everybody partying? Why are they all mad at me? Why are they bringing out that big machine with the diagonal shaped blade on it that falls? I don't know. What do I do? Right. So it's kind of like, but it's like, I think like the facade, like, well, I mean, this is kind of like, just to kind of respond, kind of not orthogonally, but like kind of like from your last rant, like that, I think like a lot of the facade is cracking in a lot of places simultaneously, like in terms of like the 50% or over more people under the age of 40 want socialism over capitalism in America, which is like never, that's like a totally reversal. So that's the concept. And obviously like you're not the only one who's obviously you work with IWW, and so everybody is like, why aren't you in the IWW? And there's a lot of people like from a lot of directions, including on YouTube, the bread tube is just one small piece of international, slowly growing. It's still very decimated, like you said, but it's slowly growing left. And I think that like I as a programmer and somebody who has had opportunities to work in like large, let's just say if you're a programmer, the number one job you can get is high frequency algorithm programming trading. Basically, programming the artificial intelligences that help Bloomberg's because billionaires don't know where their money is. That's what I say. The difference between a millionaire. Right. A millionaire is somebody who wears a suit and tries to impress everybody. Look at, I got this personally tailored in London. It's a Brooks Brothers suit, and look at that. That's a Porsche. That's a $80,000 car. The billionaire comes in with a Metallica T-shirt with like I literally know a billionaire who plays D&D all day. So he loves video games. It's another thing you don't know. I know. Well, one of the billionaires that, and I'm still poor, so that tells you what they think about you. But he loves fucking D&D. Like he loves it, and he comes in a Metallica T-shirt, and he comes in flip flops. I mean, I'm in Hawaii. This is where all the fucking they're all here. This is Billionaire Central right here. But
I'm in Florida. I'm in the
that's another
keystone light of both California and Hawaii's economic inequality. We all share a very special, awful discourse from the United States with each other, just a little bit.
Yeah. Florida is the eastern seaboard's Hawaii, basically. Yeah, it's like
no income tax, and that's literally the reason why. The reason why is a lot of Republicans who don't regulate and no state income tax. That's why.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like it's So anyways, it's like that's really what I just did an interview recently with somebody about Nation. I was trying to figure out like what like they asked me like how is this. Well, I'll go into that later. But I will say, like, with the capitalist realism, it is starting to crack because there are so many people that are seeing that, well, they're having your experience, like your experience, my experience, everybody in this chat. I'm pretty sure every single one of these people has had that experience of like, oh my God, they said go to school. They said stay in school. We're the most educated generation. The people, our generation is, and Gen Z is probably going to be even more educated than us. Even if they don't go to college, just because of the amount of access to information, just the amount of true information that they will have access to. Because to me, capitalism, one of my things that I kind of go off is like, capitalism is a disinformation system. That's something, a kind of topic I talk about a lot. In the sense that, literally, if you are Michael Bloomberg, if you want to make a lot of money, you want to tell everybody, if you're Goldman Sachs, you want to tell everybody, you know what, late 2007, October, Q3 2007 is when you want to take your firefighter pension fund and start dumping that into United States, Florida, McMansions. It's a great time to buy housing right before, and then they're shorting it, right? So then, now your parents and my parents and everyone else's parents has lost their entire 40 years of their life savings teaching, butchering, baking, candlestick making, and so now when we need a house to live in, mommy and daddy's house, it's gone, right? And I'm actually going to be housing, like I said, an American who has no house, because actually 3 different American people have asked me, Chris, can you house me? Because my parents lost their house. I can't afford a house. The water's coming out smelling like dog feces and liquid Drano, and I need a place. And I said, dude, I'm already giving it to an American who lost their fucking house. And so everybody is there. Everybody, I think not everybody, but a lot of people are over it. There's a few, it's not necessarily, I say like boomers and mentality. It's like people who haven't yet had the experience of the full force of capitalism. They haven't, the edges of empire haven't yet come home to internally colonize them yet. They're eating their children. But if you're rich enough, your children may be spared, right? If you're a multimillionaire in San Francisco and your mommy and daddy can pay for you to be creative and pretend to be a photographer in LA or a 4-star chef, hipster, I'm going to set up a kale smoothie thing in Silicon Valley or in fucking Seattle.
Brewery or something, yeah.
Yeah, so but what I say is even 1%ers, I just talked to a somebody who's working at I think it was either Facebook, and then they work for Uber, and then they, they're playing musical chairs in Silicon Valley, and they're saying the latest thing is Silicon Valley is going to solve housing by building. They're basically reinventing. Elon Musk reinvented the bus and is going to charge 50 times as much and put all the money in his pocket. They're reinventing dorms and saying we're going to have there's an entrepreneur who's going to build 800 thousands and thousands of housing units that are basically just it's going to be it's going to be advanced, co-working, super podments where everybody lives in a little coffin and they all have a shared kitchen. It's going to be brilliant, and they're going to cost $2,000
Amazon
each.
hamster cage, yeah.
And it's like,
oh, absolutely, absolutely, that's gonna happen.
yeah.
That it sounds like a techno futuristic like Blade Runner adjacent nightmare, and yes, that's exactly what it sounds like, and it is absolutely going to happen. It is an inevitability, like no doubt in my mind. Anyways, I just wanted to echo you on that. Yeah, that's absolutely going to, like, not only is that in the imagination right now of these fucking people, they're going to do it. They are super villain. It's so absurd. And it's the reason why we have to use culture to talk about things like this, is because the reality that we deal with is unbelievably absurd.
Yeah, it is for sure. Like, that's why it's like why is this game like, it's like reality, and it's like, well, it's hard to satire reality. Like, the Onion went out of business because it's like impossible to it's not impossible, but it's very difficult. You have to be wholesome to deal with the level of like Kafka-esque absurdity that we're in, right? So anyway, but I'll finish that thought with one percenters in San Francisco are saying, even I'm making $120,000 a year in San Francisco. Like, I'm doing the thing. Like, if anybody, like, okay, you and I went to college, and some people are like, well, Chris, you should have like got a better STEM degree, or you should have like went to San Francisco. You should have went to the big city and got one of the good jobs, right? You shouldn't have got a history degree. You shouldn't have got an art degree. You shouldn't have got an English degree. You shouldn't have got a this and a that and the other thing, right? But these people are like, I'm no shade to you. I'm just like, I've heard this from other people. Like, my siblings are like, why are you
No, I've heard it from plenty of people. I go man because it's a really silly thing, and the too long didn't read of it. The one sentence answer is that what people think are like the sort of waste away, like nonsense things now weren't like, people have no context for the things that they think. Anyways, sorry. No, continue. I've heard that. So, what are you gonna? Oh, that's interesting that you're doing that. What do you do with that? It's like, can you ask any of these questions differently, please? Like, for both of our sakes, because I'm so uncomfortable. Like, I don't need to explain like why we need to analyze history to you, please. I'm sorry your public school failed you. Mine did too. Like, but anyway, sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, so it's like, but those folks that are up there, they're saying like, but even making like 100, like, and I talked to you recently about that guy who's making, I think I brought up that guy who's making 100. Like, it's basically making like $98,000 or $103,000 as an aircraft engineer. Like, did I mention that one? Yeah. So but there's Silicon Valley people that are making over like 110, 120, but even $120,000. The housing costs, like the mortgage costs, are like $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 per month. That's over 12 months. If you do the math, that's $120,000. You're picking your whole entire, like, this is like tier one, like not, well, maybe not tier one, but like like right next to running YouTube, right, level of mortgage, like deciding like to ban all the leftists off of Twitch. Like, the only person's higher than that, is that person. The algorithm inputters at the high level, they're making six figures, but it's still six figures. Anyway, so at the long story short of that, a TLDR of that is, I guess my point is that like the facade from the bottom to the top is starting to crack. The only places where there aren't cracks are for people like Bloomberg and the children of people who have like 10 Airbnbs, maybe, right? And who have, maybe out in the country somewhere, but they gotta have friends. Like, you can't, like, if you're the child of somebody, if you're going to like, skiing in the Alps and then going to the fire festival, and then, you can't it's harder to get a date nowadays because, like, nobody wants to date a capitalist. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, I'll stop there. So I'll just say, like, I'm just in a response to the kind of that capitalist realism. But for sure, depending on where you are, if you're working in certain settings, it's really hard to talk to this. So especially with your parents and family and people who are like not in like a what is that, academic? I guess if you're in academic settings, there's more people discussing this. But like in some of like more, I don't know what is a mainstream. I don't even know. I think you know what I'm saying, right?
Yes.
Yeah, where would you say is the split between like where people are people starting to connect the dots and going, wait, actually maybe we could have something more than just this shit hell world, and where's the disconnect, do you think, in the US?
Well, I mean, where it is no offense to, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that there's not any tenured faculty in chat, so I can speak openly. It's not tenured faculty. I talk about it a lot because it still makes me laugh because it's just the most either bold-faced lie or the like silliest thing that some people believe. Kitty cat's here. Um,
Hey, kitty.
but uh, this sort of like right wing reactionary like idea that that like all the tenured professors in the university are converting students into like like Marxists who major in gender yelling or whatever, like and SJW studies or their grievance studies. This like not this like complete absolute nonsense. Like are there Marxists in universities? Well, Marxist was a major modern philosopher, the most important philosopher of the 19th century. Yeah, there's like a smattering here or there, but know who is in all over university campuses and in tenured positions are the fucking libs. Everyone is a lib. They are all libs. I know two people who I think I could, I would, grant them the distinction of socialist or some kind of anti-capitalist. And then there are some people who would maybe call themselves that, but who are more like social democrats at the most, and who are probably going to vote for Elizabeth Warren. And then then there's just libs everywhere. So this idea that everything is filled with Marxists is, it's complete fucking bullshit. And it's funny to me because I've been around you. Like I'm, I'm like I'm the scary commie in the department. There's actually like three of us in my like we all came in the same semester, and there's I think I think five of us that could reasonably consider ourselves socialists, and three that are just like, oh yeah, communist would describe me. So, and we're all have a healthy understanding of Marxism, a contemporary one, not sort of one frozen in amber that some people have, which I think is a little strange, and a little ahistorical, but nonetheless. Um, at university campuses where the radical stuff is happening and where the real cracks are forming, I have I have the greatest example, uh, like that there is a wildcat strike that is going on at the University of California, Santa Cruz,
Oh yeah,
right
yeah.
now.
I was just talking about.
And
I was just talking about that for the last like two times I got on. I was like, that's the
oh
other
yeah.
thing I was saying. Everybody watch this. So go ahead. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh no, this is the most important labor action that has happened over the past several years, in my opinion. Like we're still sort of riding a strike wave right now, which is really great. The CWA strike last year, there was hotel strikes, two of them over the past couple of years, I believe. There was a whole bunch of direct action, teachers, that sort of a thing. Great stuff, but wildcat strike, and I could smell that something cool was happening, and it all sort of lining up for me. And then I started to think the next thing that needs to happen is that the strike needs to spread, because that's what sort of old school wildcat strikes do. These are grad. Sorry for not doing context for those who weren't in your chat or my chat, because I've been yelling about it forever too. Uh,
Yeah.
the graduate student workers, teaching assistant and research assistants at the University of California, Santa Cruz, went out on strike. That was not authorized by the UAW, the union that they're organized with, for what they're calling a hashtag COLA, a cost of living adjustment, which would basically amount to um, uh, for the 10 months a year that they're paid, almost $2,000 a month, something like that, about 10 grand in a raise. Because, and I definitely know what this is like because I live in the middle of one of the biggest housing bubbles in the country right now, Orlando. They pay anywhere from between 50 to 75% of their wages in rent. Basically, in order to go into academia nowadays, and this is just generally true, if you don't have any support, you have to take a vow of poverty. If you're not it's just like
Yeah.
you like
What? Sorry. What percentage are adjunct? Like, I was reading the stats, like adjunct and what grad students, like like if you're working, what percentage are tenured versus not tenured? I guess.
Oh, I know that a majority of academic labor on university campuses in the United States, at least, is now non-tenured, definitely. And I think getting close to like the majority of it are graduate students and adjunct teachers, not even full-time like contract faculty, all part-time, all like temporary contract, like yearly contract employees. So a majority. So if you want to go into academia now, like if you want to get a PhD, it's valid poverty. And then if you want to teach, well, more than likely, it's a valid poverty. And if you study the humanities, well, guess what? Your job is completely disappearing, and in some places, your department is completely disappearing.
Oh
So
shit.
you have to start hawking your wares on YouTube and hope that people sign up for your fucking Patreon. So by the time your master's is done, you can actually afford to pay for your student loans. When I have to inevitably, I mean, sorry, not I, you have to, when one has to, whoever we're talking about, um, like split their time between several campuses and 2-year colleges, trying to put together enough to make ends meet, which is already half of what I'm doing, and it fucking sucks.
Oh
So
shit. Like
yeah,
I just want to say
wildcat strike.
I'm very sorry that like I just want to jump in, but I'm very I made like a joke the other day because I remember talking to you and I looked this up and I looked up the strike and then I was like. Because you mentioned, I looked it up and I was trying to spread information. I was like, "Holy shit!" I made a joke. I was like, we got these college. I kind of use these kind of like examples of like like people living in their cars, and we got these college professors like hoping that they get $200-300 a month on the Patreon so they can pay for their freaking insulin. And I was like, oh my, I feel so bad that you're like literally telling me that. Sometimes my whole deal is like I try to like run the razor's edge of hyperbolic and how bad actually is it, and I want people to look into it, but I didn't actually think that it was like that bad. I didn't realize that
Well, no, things that are funny can also be true, and things that are funny and true can also be tragic. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like,
yeah.
I would make a joke about how I just did. I made a joke. Okay, so let me just take literally the statement that I made and turn it into a joke that, I mean, at least to me is appropriate. I'm not going to be able to get a tenure track job, so I have to hawk my wares on YouTube in order to pay for all of the medication I have because I have a long history of mental health problems. Like, like I'm gonna have to hawk my wares to pay for my medication. Like,
Oh
that's both
shit, man.
funny and horrifying at the same time. But like, I
Yeah.
mean, it's just true. This is the United States. I have to make jokes about this because it's so it's really bad. It's just not good.
Yeah.
It's not good. It's not good for a bunch of reasons because it's not just about me. It's fresh on the brain because yes, yesterday I talked to a close friend of mine who he and his family live where I'm from and where my family lives, Ocala, and he was just calling and catching up. My friend is on a portion of the autism spectrum to where he's very high functioning, in terms of language, in terms of his motor function. He drives and everything, but will he live independently anytime soon? He's in his early 20s, and I would say probably not, at least for the next 10 years. So if that gives anyone an idea, um very close friend of mine. I love him very dearly, but he's struggled, and that's just the beginning because his parents take care of his 3 nephews, his sister's kids. His sister has a lot of drug problems, which is a big thing in Florida. Were drug problems in my family, and those people did not make it because Florida is fucking awful and terrible to working class people. But anyways, this family, uh, uh, the mother works as a paraprofessional. None of them went to college. The dad, who was like a union mechanic and an electrician, he bounced back between basically those 2 jobs. They used to live in New Jersey and then they lived in Tennessee or whatever. He got Parkinson's. He can't work. He hasn't been able to work for about 5 years now, I think. Um, so they have these 3 kids. 2 of them are in high school that are their grandkids, and then one of them's in middle school. Their own son, who can't live independently. What happens every single time they have to apply to the federal government for disability? Well, they get denied, every single time. They get to that family, what I just said, all of that stuff, and also the mother who's their breadwinner or whatever. She had a heart attack last year, and she had another one like a month ago or whatever. It's it 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 makes me like it makes me want to spit blood. I'm so mad the fact that this family every single year they apply for their disability that gets rejected, and then they do the same song and dance. They go to their lawyer and they say, "Hi again, we're back," and they say, "Here you go," and then they go to a judge, and then they go in front of the judge, and then the judge goes, "What the fuck is this again?" and then signs off on it, and then they get their disability, song and dance, and a whole bunch of money that they don't have every single year. And it like it's not going to stop there either. I say this because about a week ago, I think I saw that the Trump administration is going to try and make it more difficult for people to apply for federal disability, and of course, instantly I'm like, well, fuck me. It's probably on the chopping block are going to be the family that I know very close, who the kind, generous, loving people who wouldn't harm a fly, and who are like very, very deeply religious, like Christians, but who accept my partner with they love him, like, and have been nothing but supportive and kind and generous to me. They treat me like family. Those people, these like fucking saints, can't get a break. And they've been taken through the ringer. And they can't get one. And if they can't get one, I'm not going to be able to fucking get one. And if I can't get one, a person of color isn't going to be able to get one. And if a person of color isn't going to be able to get one, an indigenous person of color as fuck isn't going to be able to get one. And you just take it down the gradations of just this like absolute eating shit over and over again from all kinds of marginalized groups, and just like all of us broadly as the working class. And like we were talking about capitalist realism earlier, it just becomes so easy to just be like, well, like, okay, what part of this giant pile of dog shit would I like? This smaller pile, probably the smaller side, you know? That sounds satisfactory. I think I'll just go, you know, kick back or whatever. You either black pill, or you either become like a horrifying upwardly mobile, like petite bourgeois, like lib monster who like spends all of their time like, you know, preaching about the value of treating your workplace like it's your own home, like to your coworkers, and then you go home and your kids fucking hate you. Like these are the choices that we have in front of us. So what? This is like it's all of it at once, but I've just been experienced this over the past few years, like going into academics and like doing a master's and wanting to do a PhD, still wanting to do a PhD, still planning on doing a PhD. But with all of this knowledge, it's like, what do I do? Well, I just start, you know, packing my tool belt. And by my tool belt, I mean the backpack filled with bricks. And then when the time comes, I just like, you know, take it off, and then you unzip it, and then you just start fucking chucking them whenever you can. And by the time they kick me out of the university, well, maybe I'll have enough money on Patreon to be able to, like, you know, pay my student loan money and stuff. But I figured the way to do it is to just like to be the academic that exists within the space of the academy as well as the public space. Which, I mean, let's fucking face it. If we want to talk to people who are under the age of 50, it's online. So I started doing stuff online as like an internet Marxist, academic, theorist, historian, you know, homosexual. And I'm gonna do the academic thing as long as they basically until they literally run me. Gonna kind of stand there and see, you know, what they do to me. Yeah, and like I don't know. I think this is what we do in the academic space. We organize like practically labor unions, and we organize undergraduate groups, undergraduate unions. Speaking of UC Santa Cruz, they're organizing an undergraduate union right now, which are very, very important. And then yeah, just like we have to get back to the early like 20th century attitude of like it truly is us versus everyone who's deciding that they're going to be on the side of the fucking bosses when things have been so bad for so long that I'm just done. I'm done being nice about it. I'm done being like, oh yeah, well, I'll be respectful and well, you know, whatever. Fuck all of that. I can't do it anymore. I worked too hard. I've lost years of my life trying to put myself through college. Again, like I was talking about earlier, doing everything everyone told me to do. And all for what? Well, not a whole lot. So we're going to organize and we're going to fuck shit up. Those are my goals. And I have a lovely I'm a very lucky now too. I have a very stable first bit of stability I've gotten in my adult life at all, because of two incomes, and because if anyone follows me on Twitter, everyone knows that I'm really annoying talking about how much I love my husband, because we really get along and he's a very cool, nice person who I care about quite a bit. So I have plenty of good things, but it's not going to be enough of me until working people have like dignity and respect. And I've been organizing for a while, so I guess we're just going to keep organizing.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. That's all you can do. You just keep organizing. I mean, it's literally. I was just talking. Well, everybody I talk to for sure is saying that. I was just talking to was it a tribe? You know who A Tribe Called Red is?
No, I don't think so.
Oh yeah, A Tribe Called Red. Like they're like a famous. They did the song Stadium Powell. Do you know during the DAPL against the Keystone X, that massive fossil fuel pipeline, they were trying to railroad through the indigenous people's territory in Dakota. Yeah, so they were like they're like a world famous like touring group, and they did a lot of promotion.
Oh, cool.
and support of the water protectors there. Yeah, so I'm Native Hawaiian, like I said. So I'm also a protector here on Mauna Kea. I don't know if you heard about that, but yeah. So we were talking. I mean, just from like from like he's DJ NDN is one of the members of Tribe Called Red. We've connected up as we're keeping an eye on what's happening in Canada right now, simultaneously what's happening in the United States. There's a huge against the fossil fuel pipelines. There's just be shut down to that whole entire. Talking about cracks, they kind of like imploding the entire neoliberal infrastructure up there, which is good, and they need to keep pushing that as hard and fast as they can.
Yes,
and while I was talking to DJ, and he's Anishinaabe, Indigenous First Nations from the Ontario area, as far as it's Ontario. In Canada, but just to cut that short, that's one thing I've been dealing with a lot, is trying to like spread all these international struggles, because that's how capitalism is like. I think it was Bong Joon-ho who said I showed Parasite to people in Australia, countries in Africa, Asia, South America, butchers in Taiwan and billionaires in New York, and undergrad, would maybe one day I'll have a Patreon, professors, like just people all over the world, and they all said, "Oh, that's a lot like my life." Whether they were super rich or super poor, they're like, "Yeah, we're a lot of people trying to get some crumbs from the people with like 20, like the have-nots trying to grab a piece of the have-yachts, like a little slice of a yacht kind of thing."
I mean, yeah.
Anyway, so, and I was like, I kind of went on three sub tangents, but his point was like, I guess we all live in one country called capitalism now. We don't live in America. We don't live in We don't live in Canada. I mean, the KKR is like the company behind the Coastal GasLink pipeline that's trying to railroad through right now the Wet'suwet'en in First Nations territory to install a planet-ending massive pipeline with the backing of Canada. It's in Canada, right? And Canada has 50% of all of the oil and mining companies are all inside of headquartered in like Toronto, but there's a hedge. Its investment fund comes out of London and has a Wall Street branch. And United States General portrays that there's a South Korean pension fund that has its money in there. The international capital is international, and so like one thing that we've been trying to I don't know what I've been trying to do along with other people. I go along a lot of different what do you call it? I have a lot of Venn diagrams of aspects of. Connection. Obviously, one of them is indigenous because I am a Native Hawaiian. Although I'm mixed, but everybody here is. Tribe. And I was talking, and he said the same thing that you said. He said like, what we have to do right now is organize. Like he's doing right now. This Saturday, I was going to talk to him again. Now I had to talk with him the other week about like re-indigenation as another kind of another facet of how do we break capitalist realism's like matrix, right, and get to something that is post-capitalist, like. And so like where I am now, like I said, we're in Hawaii, and he's in the Anishinaabe territory, where like indigenous cultures have a very different perspective, obviously, for a multi-thousand. I call it indigenous anarcho-socialism. Like we don't have a concept. Like when people ask Like we don't have a like here. Like when people have 100 bananas, we don't go like we go, okay, well, I'll eat 5, and my partner eats 3 or 4, and the kids eat 2, and the rest we're gonna give to the neighbor. We have a neighbor. We just gave him some coconuts, like and then the other neighbor gonna have, you gotta give him 10, and my cousin and people that I don't even know, like people like literally when you drive down the street here in Big Island of Hawaii, where we actually still have Hawaiian culture. I'm like driving down the street on a Halloween night. Everybody's, it's like it's Halloween night. I mean, like shit, you wouldn't want to, like in Waikiki, a Halloween night. You don't want to, you don't know who the hell you're dealing with. Somebody driving down the street. They might be, you don't know who it is. But in like the town, even like the town, like the there's like 100,000 people in the town downtown. I was just driving through. I didn't know who they were, and they just yelling out like, "Hey, are you hungry? Come eat food." And it's like that is like how. That's how Hawaiian culture is, and I was talking to DJ Eden, who's a First Nations from Canada. He's like, that's how we are. Like we don't hoard stuff. Now if there's, and I do have some friends who are American. I mean, no shade to Americans and people who are white. I mean, it's the capitalist culture that's in their mind. They're like, Chris, you got extra space. You gotta be flipping that. You gotta be flipping that house. You could rent that out for $2,000 to a bunch of like millennials, like who want to be like people with history degrees who are like saving their 300 from Patreon. You should be milking all their Patreon money and get 20 millennials, stick them in that little rental. You could buy out 2 more properties. You could be renting those out. You could have 3 other millennials cleaning those Airbnbs for you. Chris, you're sitting on it, literally telling me you gotta, like I had 3 different like I would say they're Gen X to Boomer white Americans who are transplants, and they're telling me you gotta move on that. You gotta take those 100 bananas. You gotta sell them for 2, 3. How much can you get for the bananas? You then take all the money you make from those bananas. You could buy up another acre of banana patch, bring in some Hondurans or some Filipinos and make them work that thing, and then you could buy up this whole lot and have a giant banana republic. And I'm like, that's why we don't let you run shit here. Like, so long story short, I mean that's kind of like I just kind of like connect that up to what you said. Like I mean, obviously we're coming from a different angle, and I'm from Honolulu. I'm from the city. Like I grew up for 35 years of my life in deep, like it's like it's Hawaii, it's Manhattan, it's fucking Miami in Hawaii. It's like it's Singapore. Yeah. It's fucking Singapore where I'm from, and so I grew up. Like I didn't even learn a word of Hawaiian because it was illegal to speak Hawaiian until 1986. So it's like. So like I was basically raised to be I went to a fucking feeder school for Harvard, and that's like so I know what like elite like people who go to like Obama's school is right down the street from mine. My school is $20,000 a year right now, and I'm like, my parents are like, Chris, why don't you send your kids there? I'm like, dude, like I don't make $20,000 a year period. like
with what?
like you got
my hopes. Like I can't pay for it with that.
Yeah, we could like in a video game rob some banks. Like what are we gonna? Yeah. What you pay for it, sucker? Like that's why I literally told me, motherfucker, you pay for my kids to go there. And he said, oh shit, well we lost all our 401k, so I guess your kids aren't going there. Anyway, so but I guess so. The key is like I think like organizing is a thing that I guess like you said like obviously like it's fucking horrifying and it sucks, and like I remember having those exact same feelings like dude, this is over. Like if I was more like I think if I was more of a certain type, I could have been one of more of those like deeper like the black you can, because there's another way you can take this. You can take this into like, well, let's just aim all our anger at the people that look different. Let's just like end it, and just but like I think like I think if we do that, then the capitalists win. That's the way I always kind of thought of it. It's like we have to like channel that into something at least as difficult as the fight seems. Like I mean, right now, like yes. I would have told you that like it's impossible. I'm like, dude, I'm living in like the slum, living in a car. Me and my wife and our kids, we're living in a freaking SUV, eating spoonfuls of peanut butter. Like this is it. This is all there is. I'm like, fucking, let me just I'm just like wife, just go marry some fucking rich guy or something. Like I don't know. I had points where I was like, it was very desperate and it's very sad and you have to like accept those feelings as well. But at the same time, it's like I think that there are possibilities of ways that we can push back. Like, and the United States is one place. Like I talked to like American Johnson and Luna. They're in fucking Vietnam. Their insulin is like $4 a month. So like it's not impossible. It's not impossible. Like. Anyway, I'll stop there. Yeah.
No, you bring up a whole bunch of stuff that I find to be really sort of important. A whole bunch of ideas that I think are at the very least worth leveraging or need to be introduced into our sort of common parlance on the left. And the first and foremost is issues of indigeneity, and for about 855 bazillion reasons why. One is the right thing to do, like to why has this sort of like scheme of living within the world in a particular way not been more readily incorporated into the left-wing project, as both as a means for advocating for indigenous groups in a meaningful, material, and substantive way, as well as capitalizing on the opportunities that that constructions of society outside of sort of the imagination of liberalism as it emerged through the 17th and the 18th centuries, in mostly settler colonialism. There's a I think there are a whole host of different ways to leverage critique at liberalism, and I think we all have probably, at the very least, several in our back pocket at any given time. But one of the big ones is the ways that the liberal construction, the like European and eventual sort of like global North construction of property ownership, is something that was supplanted onto either sort of like territories that were the victims of imperialism during the scramble for Africa, or during the period of high imperialism in Germany, or sort of the French colonial period, which lasted longer into sort of the middle of the 20th century. Regardless of any of these places, and settler colonial structures in the United States, you see, like, regardless of where you look, Palestine, not just northern Africa, all the way over to that portion of the Middle East, and then Southeast Asia, all these places where you see, like, there is a particular set of not just values, but just really like a general sense of being in the world, how people carried themselves, how people live their lives, the values that they have, the way that they share and communicate with each other. This sort of like matrix of all this like fucking crap that we're constantly like giving back and forth to each other. Like the knowledge, the epistemology of this was pushed out of like popular consciousness like a really long time ago. So now issues of indigeneity, the history of indigenous peoples, have been like purposefully wiped out from even the way that we communicate. It's all with this level of distance. Like, people who are descended from Europeans like me go to schools that talk about how, oh, the natives gave corn to the pilgrims, and then like you read about a little bit about, the real tragic stuff, Manifest Destiny, and the Trail of Tears, and like essentially westward expansionism that resulted in the absolute mass slaughter of indigenous people and the pushing of them into like onto reservations, and then the essential like sort of apartheid that grew out of the structure, and then eventually became just accepted as in common parlance as a part of history. Indigenous people became historically preserved in amber rather than people who exist and live and breathe around us. And while I knew like indigenous people, I knew people who were Cherokee and Seminole. Cherokee not necessarily being I think they were from Oklahoma originally, but Seminole being I live just south of a Seminole County right now. So
Oh,
the Seminole tribe, all a big giant part of Florida. Um, but when I lived in Alaska in 2000, between 2014 and right before 2016, no, 2013 to right before 2016, I spent almost all of my time. I spent a little bit of my time, and then I spent all the rest of my time in Sitka, uh, on Baranof Island. I spent a little bit in. I spent 2 nights in the village of Cape, which has about 600 people, an Alaska Native village. And I worked for the originally the ballot initiative in the organization, and then the political campaign that I was working for worked directly with the Alaska Native Brotherhood and Sisterhood organization in the area. And while I considered myself someone who was like for like this person, someone who was relatively, at least partially fluent in issues of indigeneity, mostly through analysis of colonialism and history. It's just an interest that I've always had. I'm like, I'm relatively literate, most people don't know fucking shit. So I get to feel kind of, cool about myself. Well, that was before I moved to Alaska and then spent, about three days a week almost exclusively with Alaska natives. Um, and uh like it, not even in this just like in this like hallmark like infantilizing like I learned so much kind of a way, but really in a like you know I am being as someone who is familiar with these issues and who is in this community in order to I'm specifically tasked with my job is to work directly with these organizations and see how we can work together. And it is my job to foster relationships and to get to know them or whatever. If that's what I'm here to do, well, and if I've examined these issues before and I see myself as someone who's conscious of them, well, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to see, what is happening in sort of this snapshot of like indigenous existence in this part of the world in the 21st century. What can I learn? How can I just how can I like how can I use this as an opportunity to grow? But and but like I'm not talking about white people self-flagellation stuff. I'm talking about like how can I take this, which is like going to be an enjoyable opportunity, and believe me, it was, um, because I got to eat like I got to hang out and hold people's babies while we listen to music and eat quail egg salad and watch people like race to see who could fillet a fish the fastest. Like people were kind and generous. We registered voters. We talked. People told me they didn't like my candidate. Like people like it gave me a funny looks because I clearly wasn't like I'm not even Alaskan. Like I'm not even a native Alaskan, more or less Alaskan native. But like at the end of the day, what happened is that it's a demonstration that when we are just carefully paying attention to and listening to the gestures of our social relationships and using it as an opportunity to sort of not just place ourselves within our contemporary moment, not just learn about people who are different than us, but to just really think about like how does this sort of like socioeconomic mechanisms and these cultural mechanisms, how do people who aren't like me and how do people who are really just like have been at the very top of capitalism's shit list, indigenous people, especially in the United States and in North America, like how are they like incorporated into the world that we both share, that we live in? How has this affected the way that they see it or whatever? And you get to do so in the best way possible, which is making friends and hanging out and like eating food and like playing with their kids. And like I was just the nice kid from I was, oh, that young man is so nice from Florida. He loves watching the kid. Like I like was a camp counselor and I was a seventh grade like English teacher and stuff. I love kids, so they all loved me because I would help them watch the kids and play with kids. And I helped register voters. I helped take people to the polls. It takes it like it gives like to give a message to the other people of European descent, and or what have you in chat. you know what it does is it gives you a chance to go beyond the sort of performativity that often comes with trying to figure out like, okay, how do I be this white person that engages with issues of social justice outside of my experiences. And the like when you're presented with an opportunity that's so special to like literally, because it's your job, make friends, figure out how you can help them, figure out how you can help each other, and then just do that for a year, um was very special. This is all to say, so as a result, I have a sensitivity to the level of openness and understanding and the amount of attention that I'm paying to issues of indigeneity and indigenous people and what's happening with indigenous people at any given point. Um, I'm grateful that it's turned into this mechanism that's just like, you know, these are things to pay attention to. These are things to highlight in particular because they are so far outside of the popular consciousness as if to be completely erased, not just at like the human life erased, but even the memory of human life. Talk about historical memory, right? And I think it's the most left-wing thing that you can do. And to bring it back to cap off my long rambly thing, and to bring it back to the original point that I was making, most of this capitalist realism stuff is all about like the way that we perceive land ownership, either, sort of culturally, like, who owns things and who produces things and what, like, how that implies ownership or whatever, or, just the social world, like property ownership. Those are European liberal values that were essentially supplanted onto places that did not necessarily share those values. Now, they weren't perfect values necessarily, but a lot of the times they were much more sustainable, much more conscientious, and most importantly, non-individualistic ideologies. And one time, and I swear this is the last part. One time, I had a leftist, in a very positive way, that in a loving way, which is why I'm grateful for it. Challenge me to look beyond European conceptualizations of socialism, which I'm like, oh, I've only done that a little bit, and I know you can tell that I've done that. It was they're like, you should do that because I think you would find some things that are interesting. So I can't remember the name of the author right now, and this was middle the way through undergrad, like 2009. I'd read the book by Franz Fanon, one of my biggest influences, and my entire sort of left-wing political thought, my whole evolution. Wrote a book called Black Skin, White Masks, sort of a psychoanalysis of sort of like elements of racial difference in French Algeria where he lived. There's a book called Red Skin, White Masks that does the same thing for indigenous people in North America. So I picked that up, and I picked up a couple of other things. And, to make a long story short, like, so much of what our imagination is being sort of like held onto by are like these sort of like post-enlightenment. I'm not one of these left. I think everything that came with the Enlightenment is bad. I like, life, liberty, equality, fraternity, these sort of like French revolutionary values. I think it's cool. I think those are all very good. It's just that the application of them has been in one of the most, honestly, fucking hypocritical ideological contexts in like modern European history. There's another book I'll recommend. It's called Liberalism: A Counter History, and it's by an Italian scholar that I very much like called Domenico Lacerdo. He's a historian, but he's like me. He's like a historian who just wants to do interdisciplinary work, which kind of makes you a philosopher, but then not at the same time, because we keep calling ourselves historians because we don't want to be philosophers. So, but anyways, he wrote this book that basically is like, we have a tendency to frame liberalism in terms of the principles that it puts out there, but we need to look more about what it puts into practice and how those practices were actually more linked to the principles than people realize, because there's been sort of a historical reimagination that's happening under liberalism. And basically his argument, and I completely agree with it, is that the sort of main tenets of sort of the main sustaining principles of liberalism were, rather than sort of this sort of individual liberty and freedom and stuff, or individual liberty for some people and literal actual slavery for others, as well as the roots of what would become the high points of colonialism in the 19th and the 20th century. All of these sort of paradoxes, all of these various contradictions within the ideology that don't get pointed out very much. And I think not only the voices of indigenous people who, cannot scream fucking loud enough to actually get literally just about anybody to pay attention to them in most sort of like, but this is why what's happening in Canada is such a big fucking deal. But like not only in that, but like it is the viable point of imagination outside of the confines of liberalism. And if people are worried about having to rely on the Soviet Union or Eastern Europe and stuff for, existing, or, fucking Tito, or, Cuba or whatever, or the pink tide in Latin America for existing, socialism or existing communism, well, I know it will make me a heretic or whatever, but maybe we should not just incorporate Marx into a scheme of writers and Marxists and theorists and, social scientists and people in the humanities after him, but also we should read Marx back through history and look previously too, and that indigeneity, indigenous conceptualization around land ownership, around sort of community, around identity in general, and the exchange of culture. They're perfect examples. It's such like, I don't mean to make I don't want to make just an advantageous argument, because I don't want people to think I'm being callous. I'm not just trying to say like, oh, it's advantageous to care about indigenous issues. No, that's the persuasive argument that we then use to go get other leftists and the left libs that we're trying to get to become leftist and the apolitical people that we're trying to get to become leftist to start giving a shit about indigenous issues, to start thinking about them, and then like more people learn. We persuade, and then we also make like the clear moral fucking argument that we need to be talking about this stuff. Anyways,
Uh,
end of speech. I'm just gonna say that every time I'm done talking.
yeah, there you go. Yeah, no, like, yeah, it's really like a lot of, I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, and like some people think like, oh well, you have to read the market, and I'm not saying like sometimes I say that like indigenous people, we've been doing actual existing socialism for 2,000 years. You've been thinking about Europeans have been thinking about it for 200 years, but like we like we have, like I was talking to like a lot of elders here, like and elders that his name is Ian Campbell, that's DJ Indian. And he was talking about like they have deep relationships there, like our entire way of being, like all of our mythology, our language. We don't like in Hawaiian, like for example in Hawaiian, like you might watch some Lilo and Stitch, some Disney capitalist commodified versions of Hawaiian culture, but like we don't, like when they say ohana, like ohana means family. It doesn't just mean like me and my wife and my daughter and like my nuclear family and how my castle.
Yes.
Like it doesn't.
Absolutely.
We don't like like I mean in a Chomsky, the Captain Manufacturing Consent himself, Noam Chomsky, like language creates the the way of being is formulated through language, right? And so like in Hawaiian language, and also I was talking to other indigenous people like in like the Anishinaabe, the words for, there is no word that means private property at all. Like, and this is an important point. When they came in, like Hawaiians during the Makahiki, and a lot of the times where a lot of people were kind of tricked into basically signing away a lot of things. Here's 200 pages of legalese. I mean, it happens to this day, right? Like, here's 6,000 pages with 25,000 loopholes, and now you don't have any healthcare and Medicare for all. But it's kind of like that same. Yeah, that same shit happened, but in Hawaiian, like, there's no word that means like private property. Like aina, aina is a word that comes from kinda, which means that which feeds us, that which sustains us. That's the only real word that we have that appropriates, and that word itself, there is no like differentiation between like it's like I mean, it's really hard to even describe like these concepts in English, because the only thing I can say is like, the concept for land, there's nothing that can be bought and sold. Like buying and selling, it'd be like buying and selling your mother. Like, oh, I don't really like my mom. I'm gonna trade her up. I'm gonna flip my mom. I guess some some wealthy capitalists like do trade off their trophy wives, so that exists. But that's another level of perversity of the kind of capitalist, realist, colonial brain. But anyway, so it's really like like the words itself. There is no word that means like that which is separate. Like it's only like that which feeds us, that which sustains us. Like the entire mythology to this day, like on Mauna Kea, just as an example of like where we are here. Like Holly and I, we're Kiai protectors of Mauna Kea, which they are attempting to build an obsolete $1.4 billion telescope, which 700 astronomers signed a paper saying, actually, we don't need any more earthbound.
Actually, fuck off with this piece of shit. I heard about that. Yeah,
it's like a 40-meter, it's a 30-meter telescope, gonna cost $1.4 billion. It's like gonna drop a copper, lead, and other like radioactive or toxic substances into the water supply, which is right underneath our mountain, which is like core to like global struggles, is protection of like water. Water is literally life. You don't have life without water. And anyway, so we were like, we don't want this. And like it's the entire, like you're kind of saying like the hypocrisy of like the liberal ideologies, kind of like complete, like some nice ideas, like yes, we should all be able to live, pursue our life, our liberty, and our happiness. This is a great idea. That's a great idea. Maybe making a bunch of people that are different color your slaves and abusing women, like maybe that well, they didn't count as people, so it's fine for the founding fathers, anyway. But it's kind of like that whole kind of but in terms of the hypocrisy, it's like the entire, obviously, well, number one, like just to kind of, people here know about this, but basically the number one, the entire illegal, all of Hawaii is unceded territory, like the Wet'suwet'en, which is a violation of international law. There has never been a treaty between the Hawaiians and any foreign government. We are still technically the Kingdom of Hawaii. The last queen of Hawaii was actually a communist, and that's a big reason why. You get socialist brown people with an advanced technological civilization trying to do a socialism. That's the cue for the gunboats and the bombs to show up, and America came in. And that's basically the same thing that happened to a lot of countries in South and Central America, is what happened here a lot earlier, but with no treaty. So it's always been an illegal occupation. Bill Clinton even signed an official apology that says, "Oh, we're very sorry for illegally occupying you and not having a treaty and breaking international law, committing war crimes for the last century. But can you please keep serving our mai tais and bastardizing our culture for fake plastic law?"
Then give
Yeah.
it back then.
Yeah, it's like give it back, and it's like sorry, but basically like it's like the way I kind of describe it, like I mean, and it's basically acting what you're saying. Like as in, if you're an indigenous person, you've always known that people like a lot of I mean, to kind of come at it from a different angle. Capitalism, the capitalist realism maintains itself not only through like ideological kind of encapsulation, the entire school system, like Gramscian hegemony, just controlling the culture, controlling the newspaper, controlling the radio waves, the airwaves, the television, and the 21st century, controlling social media. Like, for example, Bloomberg buying all of Facebook, so 2 ads out of 3 are "I love Bloomberg," paying 500 broke ass millennials 2005. Fun fact: if you're not making your $400 Patreon goals this month, or your Twitch, you're not getting the 30 subscribers per Twitch, you can get $2,500 from Bloomberg, which he's dumping $500 million. You can get $2,500 a month from Bloomberg to tweet, "I heart Bloomberg and I hate guillotines now and I really love billionaires." Literally, I'm not joking. 20 to 30 hours a week. It's not bad. I mean, if you really think that he's gonna fail anyway, I mean, I'm just gonna throw it out there. If you're really in a tight spot, get those Bloom dollars. Anyways, but
if anyone, so I worked in campaign politics plenty, and I've only ever caught 2 people faking their numbers, like their phone call numbers and their door knocking numbers.
Yeah.
But I bet we could figure out a way that you could get away with faking your numbers for a while. I haven't thought about how to do it necessarily, but I bet we could figure out a way for you to fake your numbers to where you could get at least a paycheck or 2 from the Bloomberg campaign before they can you. So,
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, it's like anyway, so I was kind of taking so the like the kind of manufacturing consensus reality, and so that kind of like
he literally had plants in the debate. There were people cheering for that guy. Like
was it $3,000 a ticket?
They were booing marijuana.
Who was marijuana in 2020? I was like,
no, nobody. Those people, everyone in that room, and that's it.
Yeah. Exactly, right? So like, anyway, so it's kind of like
ridiculous.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. But so like, but and like a lot, but I think like a major way that they at least from what I've seen, like, is like if you're on, like you said, if you're on the other side of that matrix, right? Like if you're one other metaphor I often use, because people like Star Wars now, it's a big thing, everybody's doing the Baby Yodas, and it's huge. So I kind of call, like, if you're inside of a settler colonial, or America is starting to lose its status because Americans, it's really sad, but the boomers are eating their own children. I mean, just I don't know how else to say it. It's really fucking fucked up. But if you are in like in Canada, if you're in a lot of Europe, or if you're in upper middle class, or your parent have like some housing left, you might not have you're in the mall of the Death Star, inside, it's like, well, I didn't see any exploitation. I didn't see anybody suffering, like in a nice plush house in San Francisco, or or like you're shopping in the mall. Like I had a Cinnabon. You're talking about this global genocide system where there's slaves in Bolivia being shot and killed, and people working for $1 a day in a mine. I didn't see any. I just got the iPhone doesn't have any blood on it. I don't see any blood. You're talking about sweatshop, Bangladesh sweatshop. My shirt doesn't have any like dead, Bangladesh, like organs on it. I don't see anybody harmed. Like it's fine. It's just totally fine. I gave 30 cents when I bought my Starbucks to donate to Bill Gates Africa Savior Fund. So I'm fine. My guilt is assuaged. I'm a liberal, good person now. I used a steel straw like Trudeau told me to do. So I'm good now. Like, it's like. And like I think like the game is like, and obviously like people like you and a lot of people in America are like the 50% who are like, fuck, I'm over this capitalist shit, because they're starting to fall out of the mall and they're starting to get onto the side of the Death Star. If you're in Iraq or Afghanistan where 3 million people have died, you're like where the ray is hitting, right? The global capitalist system is eating the oil from there. If you're in South and Central America, to an extent, you're being chewed up. If you're an indigenous person in the Amazon, you're being hit by the death ray that's burning your entire all of your family. I mean, they literally, the trees and the animals are the family. They're burning your family and your entire territory to a crisp, right? And so you're facing that. But then the people paradoxically, I was talking to my friend Kamazatsu, who's like he talks about these international organization and how the global South interacts with the global North, and what if we have the global, because I mean I think and he thinks and I think a lot of people think it kind of needs to push to an international level because we're dealing with international capitalism. If you know, so like what would that revolution look like? And I think that like the difficulties people like if like the people inside of the people who are most damaged by capitalist realism, by the capitalist system, have the best information. Like they have the information, the truth, like life, liberty, and property, and you know, respect for human rights and rule of law. That sounds fantastic. And the Iraqi knows, right? When the Tomahawk missile is blowing up their village and they're fishing their, you know, body parts of their family out of a fucking school bus, they know, right, that there is only a barbarian, lawless, democracy-free empire in the United States. They can see that they have the best information. There's nothing more real than like losing your own body and your family when in a bomb, right? Yes. Or your entire water supply and the fascists being installed by foreign governments overthrowing your democratic government somewhere, right? So like they have the best information, like and but they don't have they have very limited capacity. Like if they hold up a sign, if some Iraqis like stood in front of a rail, right, in Iraq, no, you're not going to take that. No. There would just be a bomb and they would be vaporized. There would be like a army guy holding a laser would be pointing at them and then they'd be gone, right? That's the difference. What I said, what's the difference between the Wet'suwet'en 750 miles north of Vancouver, where Ryan Reynolds and Ryan Gosling are talking to Seth Rogen about that funny think time that they, you know, had a great lay in a LA fucking party, right? What's the difference between that? They're too close. Like it's literally the distance, right? The Wet'suwet'en people are 750 miles. It's the same interest, the same fossil fuel global interest that want to build a pipeline right there. But if they want to build it too close to where the white wives and the white children and upper class white wives and white children of Justin Trudeau, of hedge fund traders in Toronto who are trading on the price of gas and oil, and all those people, if it's too close to the wife and family, if it rattles the steak dinner, right, when they're talking to the wife and their kid and going, oh, I'm such a nice guy, and aren't you glad that I got you that Baby Yoda t-shirt, then they can't just blow you the fuck up, right? And that's why, like, I mean, it's just kind of, where am I going with that? So it's like really, like, that's really the difference. It's the same struggle, but like the people with the best information, and like that's why I try to like describe like what we had here in Hawaii. Like it's another unique place because we have 43% of Hawaii is actually indigenous or identified that way, and many more of them. And like it would be like if the Wet'suwet'en actually like if the Wet'suwet'en ran Vancouver, like if the bus drivers, the construction workers, the electrical people, the people who maintain the spectrum lines, the people who like build and service all of the hotels, the entire working class or a vast quantity of them were First Nations people, right? It's why Hawaii is a really unique place, and that's why we won. Yeah. We kicked the fucking $1.4 billion capitalist international project between Gordon Moore, Intel co-founder, the guy who coined like the Moore's law. Anyway, Silicon Valley billionaire, 30 Canadian universities, not the faculty that are on Wildcat Strike, but 30 Californian universities were involved in this. I believe actually Santa Cruz was also involved in this. So, but simultaneously, the students and faculty were against this, but the administrators were for that telescope because they were going to take a cut of that. Yep. And so, but anyway, long story short. So, I mean, this is how all these struggles are internationally linked. What's up? Can I get your wallet? Yeah, sorry. Actually, the plebe is right now coming to our place. I gotta go get the plebe. So, I always gotta get the plebe.
Whoa.
It's in the car. Okay, is it in the car?
It must be.
Okay, have a good one.
Fuck Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, Holly, my wife is actually Canadian, and she says fuck Justin Trudeau.
Yes, I agree. I will second that. Fuck Justin Trudeau.
And okay, I'll try to wrap this up. But it's like the so this is a place where like we have a lot of I mean it's just kind of like what you can see as Canada is globally violating international law by being on unceded territory, which not many people know, but now more and more people are watching this and seeing this. And what is it's all for the last century? It's always been a violation of international law. It's always been a barbarism. It's always been cultural genocide and taking all our culture and trying to sell it off in fake plastic luau's for a fake Hawaiian lady on a Hawaiian Airlines ship that is the guy makes $3,300,000 a year, the CEO of that company, and he's a rich white capitalist guy. He doesn't know jack shit. He doesn't care about Hawaiians. Hawaiians work inside of his airline, and he likes that. But he pays them all starvation wages, and they're on strike. They were just on strike. But the unique thing about here in particular, like Canada, the closer you are to the inside of the Death Star in the mall where it's air conditioned, the more leverage that you have. I mean, the people who need it the most, right, are in Middle East. They're in South and Central America. They're in Asia. They're in, parts of Africa. They're in the most harshly colonized. But they have the least ability, because when they stand on the railroad, they just get wiped off because they're too far away from the wives of the CGL CEO. That's basically it. It's literally, that's what it, literally, there's hippie kids right down the street that are they're the fucking children of fucking Greenwich, Connecticut billionaires. Like I literally, every time I get on a plane leaving this island from San Francisco from Kona to San Francisco, the last time I sat next to it was literally like the nephew of the New York Fed chairman, and he's just like, oh yeah, I'm having a great time. I'm going to the Fire Festival, and then I'm going to Burning Man, and then I'm going to see my dad, and then my wife has a career as a L'Oreal model, and that's great. And we're just hanging out. We're just doing a little Hawaii. We have a little taro patch. We're having a kale. We're having a little seance, and we're having a little, ayahuasca. Hey, it's really cool. Hey, how's it going, Hawaiian guy? I love Hawaii. And they're too. If they bought a B-52H Stratofortress from Guam. They dropped 15,000 pounds of C4 equivalent in bombs, with the same fucking bombs they drop in Iraq, on Mauna Kea, to make a point. We have it. We can, and they're trying to keep the elders up at night. So when a bomb goes off 6 miles, with 30 miles from it, where we are right here, the earth shakes. It's like thunder. 6 miles, it like split your fucking ear. They dropped it at night to wake up the elders, to make it more uncomfortable and scare the Hawaiians off of the mountain. Attempt to scare them off. They fucking failed, of course, because right. we fucked them up. But anyway, yeah. So we're up there base. But the thing is, if it was Iraq, they would have dropped that same 15,000 pounds of bombs on us. But we're too close to the rich white children. They're right there. Some of them are on the mountain too. And so anyway, what is the point of that? So I'm kind of going off, but it's really like the people who have the information, the people who are suffering are the people that are the most outside of capitalism, like culturally, and indigenous people, and I can't obviously I am Hawaiian, but it's like, I'm not as, I don't know. I struggle with that myself. Like, what exactly am I? I'm part Japanese, I'm part white, but identify as Hawaiian. My sister literally teaches Hawaiian, but the culture, the core of the culture, which does still exist. Like, a lot of it has been eradicated, especially in America. Less so in Canada. Canada actually has lots of swaths of it left, but those people who are, just to kind of bring it into why that's one piece of important organizing is centering it around indigenous issues, particularly close to the imperial metropole, I think is Blackbird Guard's usage of the term. It's because that is the soft belly of the dragon, is one way to put it, right? Like here, we didn't, there were only 34 arrests. There were 30, they brought militarized police, they brought the goddamn military, they brought the fucking bomber up here. Right. But they were unable to, even at the DAPL, they had dog kennels, they were fucking fire hosing people in negative 44 degree temperature. The level of violence that they were capable, and also we also had, there were slowdowns on the highway. The only highway from the airport to the hotels, where 57 or 67 billion dollars of tourism happens, was slowed down. There were no respecting of Hawaiian culture. Well, you won't have any Hawaiian fake plastic luau's and no more Hawaiian dances in your little hotel, and then that scared the shit out of all of the tourism interests. So that was it was a very soft spot, and I'm just waiting. In about 3 weeks, there's a moratorium on construction on that mountain. I think that they might try to still go up again, and we might have to get back up on the mountain and fuck up the United States superpower, the so-called superpower of the United States, with all your military and they fucking brought up. They did 8,000 arrests. They brought up people being pulled over just for having a Hawaiian flag or Hawaiian language on the side, but they lost and they're defeated and they don't know what the fuck they're gonna do, because the indigenous people are getting organized. Well, along with allies here, we were able to defeat them much easier than the Wet'suwet'en, but at the same time, anyway, and what I hope, maybe to kind of project forward, I'm kind of stop ranting. The Wet'suwet'en and what is happening in Canada with a transnational across the country from the west coast to fucking 6,000. It's the second biggest country after Russia by geography. Across that country, there are blockades, port blockades, rail blockades, capital shutdowns, and like what I hope is that like that action, hopefully like what's happening in the UC, the California system, the California education system with those wildcat strikes links up, and that more people can kind of like people coming at wherever angle you're coming at coming to it from. Like I think that like I hope that people see the successes, and we have to point out these successes. So every time we do have a win, so I try to say like we won against the TMT. We've stopped it for like the last technically 5 years in the last 6 months. And the Wet'suwet'en, they have they haven't begun construction, and Trudeau is starting to like they had to like last night they arrested like a bunch of their chiefs, but they were released within 2 hours. They didn't have a way to hold them. They didn't have enough cops. They had like 38 cops, and there was like 60 people. And then they took down three blockades, and 8 more sprang up. So anyway, I'm going off too long, but I think like projecting forward, like we have to link all of these struggles up eventually, and I think it has to be in places like America, in places like Canada, in places like Europe. Not that people shouldn't resist, like in the Middle East, in South Central America. It's basically like there. It's like, please just survive. Like, just don't get dead by the bombs. Don't get killed by the bombs. But like, we have to kind of do what we have to do this here because we have the capability to do that. Just because of the proximity to the children. I mean, I don't really know other way. I'm not like we're like using them, but it's just like the proximity, the NIMBY thing, right? The billionaires don't want to shit in their own backyard, and they value their children. I literally know like. Hawaii's there are 70% like or 50 to 70% penetration of solar panels on roofs because one billionaire, and actually work for this guy, Tetris. Anyway, the guy who owns Tetris. His daughter was like, Dad, I want to be a marine biologist. I want to research narwhals and dolphins and whales, and you're killing them all with the business that you're invested in. And he was like, oh shit, I guess I am. All right, well, I'm gonna put $1 billion into putting solar everywhere, and then it happened. Anyway, I'll stop going off. Maybe you can project forward. Like, what is this? What if we don't get totally annihilated by capitalist realism? What are the paths forward? Like, maybe how does like Outer Worlds and these other speculative and science fictional worlds tie into that? That you can think of. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I'll. Since I'm at the jump, well, once I get about 120, once I hit about 2 hours, that'll be my my cue to go back and finish editing my video.
Oh shit! Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
No, don't apologize. Don't apologize. I didn't even mention it.
Okay.
Don't apologize. Just ahead of time, so before I get on a big long rambly thing and forget, because I'll talk for an hour again. First of all, like. Where it's going to come, it's going to come to a head for a lot of people is directly in front of them and directly in their lives. So there's 2 things that are going to happen. There's 2 things that need to happen. One that's going to, and another thing that needs to follow. The first thing is that the contradictions of capital are going to continue to further reveal themselves in this like absolute like nutty version of neoliberalism that we find ourselves in, that's so unbelievably bloated, it's just lurching itself through this sort of like post modernity period, and it's very like it's very looking at it, it's this big bumbling like sort of like apparatus that is absolutely going to completely crash and burn, and it's going to be ugly when it does. And I think we can already see that what's rising to sort of catch capital and rescue capital, as it always does, is this sort of like post-fascist like new turn on the reactionary right. And so 2 things like are happening here. One, the world is crumbling. Like the world will soon be more on fire than not on fire. It seems to like, like ecological crisis is going to continue to swell, and what's going to happen is not what all the liberals say, which is we're all going to die right away. No, it's actually they're actually fucking that up too somehow. We're not going to die right away. All of the people in the global south are going to be displaced based off of water shortages and based off of natural disasters. And this migration crisis that's happening in Europe is going to look like a migration cupcake. I tried to think of the nicest thing I could think of in comparison, because it's going to be a fucking joke in comparison to what's going to happen. And that is when you have Fortress United States emerge, and that's when the true new sort of like position, supposedly outside of the mechanisms of capital and very much inside the mechanisms of being extremely racist, anti-Semitic, and like having a policy of extermination against minorities. But it's just all to say that like these contradictions are going to reveal themselves. So the second thing that needs to happen, that there's no guarantee is going to, is that when these contradictions reveal themselves, we need people there to organize, and to sort of to let people know that like this is not all in your head. Your job fucking sucks. You're treated like shit. You're not appreciated. You have very little agency in your own life, and you're not crazy. You're not whining too much and you just need to pick yourself up by your bootstraps. You're not fucking imagining it. You're really, really not. And I sound like a broken anti-capitalist record most of the time, but I do my best to try and like sort of leverage my own field of study to be like, no, I've looked at this stuff. The problem so often in our contemporary moment is capitalism. It's capitalism, capitalism, capitalism. We can't be afraid of saying the word. We can't be afraid of leveraging the critique, and we can't be afraid of pointing all of this out, because it intersects with too many of the things that would do the thing that I just want to happen, which is to make the lives of working people and poor people and the people who are oppressed by the sort of dominant motions of society, as the incredibly white gentleman sitting in front of you still manage to experience mechanisms of oppression growing up in very devoutly religious evangelical Christianity, and being incredibly gay, and having a lot of even feeling the mechanisms from that perspective. Me, as someone who has sort of like the privileges of history that are like working in favor for me. So if it starts there, oh man, it's worse as we go along. And then as a working class person, and like who comes from a working class family from the American South, I just feel very intimately connected to the ways in which like these contradictions have been playing themselves out in front of us the whole time. We just, in sort of nodding back to a statement you made earlier, we haven't figured out how to express those contradictions in language. It's been pushed out of our sort of like, if our subconscious, which is structured as language, is not producing the language necessary to sort of describe the things in front of us well, a framework through which to describe them has been pushed out of popular consciousness. We need to push back against it, which brings me to the very last thing, which is that video games are something that have been a part of my life forever, and there are so many people like me. And to cede that territory to the reactionary right, I think people have learned is absolutely silly, and completely ridiculous. We shouldn't be ceding any territory to the reactionary right. We should be pushing in every way, shape, or form possible. But this is it is a way to communicate culture that is unlike other things that have come before it, because yes, you can always interact in cultural spaces. Yes, you can produce culture in a way that is both tactile as well as auditory and visual, and using all of your senses. But this sort of these divisions of subjectivity that exist between us and the object that we use to control this sort of projection of subjectivity, the then sort of process of sort of a symbolism that sort of picks itself up off of the images that are moving and that you're in front of you, and then project themselves back to you. Like it is this like it starts from the most basic of like what does it mean to interact, what does it mean to be a subject that interacts with an object, one of the most sort of basic fundamental ideas of like how things work, and gets all the way to these like sort of like these projection, this generation like frame by frame of simulacra that is like so dripping with like the supposed realities of our sort of present, that even the subversive components of it are still cast within the imagination of the dominant economic system. So even when like a platform like Outer Worlds, for example, even when a game that I would say yes has anti-capitalist elements to it, that I would also say that I just really like and I think is fun and well made, like even this like the one of the anti-capitalist games that came out, it was that one and what's
Disco
it called?
Elysium.
Um uh
No,
the the s-
We
the
Happy Few.
European game.
Oh,
I'm trying. Oh, the other anti-capitalist game that everyone last year that
the one
I
that won
still
the
haven't
awards.
played. Yes,
Oh, Disco Elysium. Yeah.
Disco Elysium. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, I know. Okay, I know. I'm sorry. I'm working on it. I can actually run it on my computer now. So after I get my conference paper turned in this week, I will be playing Disco Elysium, and I will be making something about it. I'm making something about Dark Souls before that though.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a fun
I'm
play.
actually I'm trying to interview the Disco Elysium folks. They follow me on Twitter, so I'm trying to get a podcast with those guys.
I will absolutely sit and chat for that. Oh no, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. If we can see if we can get it, but anyway, go on. Yeah,
No, I mean just that at the end of the day, like the culture that you love, it's not like these reactionary right wing people do. Like when we confront the culture that we love, we don't have to be defensive about it. We just need to ultimately reflect on the sort of gestures that that it inhabit, and then we figure out how in particular we can sort of incorporate ourselves into this culture, how it affects us, that sort of a thing. All of this can be done so in such a way that is like leveraging the power of the left to just think about things differently than all of that. We have so much stuff in front of us, like so much supposed variety, but what in all actuality are simulations, and then what are simulacra of simulations, copies of copies that are like just duplicating and duplicating and duplicating. I'm sort of like dancing around Walter Benjamin, another favorite theorist of mine, but sort of the like the sort of like raw like artistic creative sort of aura of something that is made or whatever, it just gets dimmer and dimmer and dimmer in neoliberalism, because there's just this it's just this process of copying and copying and copying and copying. But all of this is to say, one, we should look at the copies. Everything becomes more interesting when you try and look at it from the perspective of theoretical critique. Video games too. It is officially becoming the joy of like I started my 30s like 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 finally doing this goofy thing on YouTube that I kind of wanted to do for several years now, and talk about theory and Marxism in video games. It's an absolute dream come true. I'm going to continue to do it, but also that like if I am in possession of the language like of this particular like cultural mode that is already the biggest it's ever been and is only going to get bigger and straddles across generational boundaries, and where it straddles is toward the younger generation, the people who are just like okay, yeah, sure, okay, Cold War, yeah, sure, okay, yeah, sure, okay, like yeah, sure, okay, Cold War, like give me a break. The people who are most likely to bring into the left, I was just thinking about recruitment and numbers. We need numbers. Like we should be talking about games, we should be playing them, and we should be analyzing them in a way isn't just constantly looking to necessarily highlight their flaws all the time. We should leverage the things that we think are good about games, but that uses critique in a way that forwards our cultural imagination. If culture really exists in exchange with all of this other stuff, which I believe that it does, then it will benefit us. And it's fun to talk about. And honestly, like I like we spend like in my Twitch channel, we spend most of our time just goofing around, talking about culture, sometimes ranting about the news or whatever. But I've gotten a bunch of people signed up on red cards for the IWW literally by sitting around and talking about video games and like being nice and answering questions. Like, and we got people recruited into like a radical union. So, like,
Right on.
why
Yeah.
not try it?
Yeah. I mean, for sure. I mean, like games, like like I mean, like you said, like it's the number one way that people. It's what people and kids in particular are using and doing. So we have to use every means, like not cede the territory. Like I mean, it's important to like look at it in terms of like not giving up any space in any aspect, because the right wing are gonna seize that back, and we have the far right and the left and the right are definitely fighting over the same territory. The liberals are like, hey, I'm just having a good time, but they can see all the upset people, and so we have to get in there before they do, or ideally, because it's harder to de-radicalize somebody who's already gone into that pipeline.
True.
So anyway, but yeah, to kind of like push it into the game space. I just had this thought. I was like thinking about. I recently watched The Expanse. I don't know if you've seen that show.
No, but I'm relatively familiar with it.
You heard about it, yeah. So like there's The Expanse. It's actually it has some similarities to The Outer Worlds in the sense that, like, I mean, just to talk a little bit about the games, just to kind of like wind it down with like actually talking about some games. Some people are going like, there is eventually going to be some actual game talk in this game tour, correct? Hello, like, but anyway, yeah. So we'll talk about. I'm thinking about Outer Worlds. I like I said, I like the video that you did about it, but like it kind of centers around this, like you said, Fallout New Vegas in space. It's a sense that's like you're going to a place, a new planet, right? Or not a new planet, a planet, and then it's a frontier sort of thing where your job is to kind of like basically work in a town and try to build up and you're trying to like get. Full disclosure, I haven't actually played it, but I've watched a lot of people talk about it. But I will say, like, it's a new place that you're exploring. It has a well, I didn't want to say the C word because I always find it really interesting. Like whenever you say, like, a lot of, like, every time you have a space show, it's like space, the final frontier. It's like space, genocide of hundreds of millions of people. I mean, like, it's like like it's always space colonization, isn't it? Right? Space colonization.
Oh yeah, of course.
And so it's like I was talking to another indigenous game dev, and he's like, I liked Outer Worlds, but it's like I don't know that it was actually a half black, half Lakota professor of game design, and also he worked at Bungie, Ubisoft. It's like a longtime game developer. He's like, I used to love these games, and I love Star Trek. His name is he's like the head of Council of Fools. It's a I don't know if that's rings any bells, but his name is Alan Turner. But anyway, so he was like, but these are like all throughout fantasy and science fiction, like, this is a thing, right? It's like we go to these places, or even the orcs, representations of kind of indigenous coded peoples, and in space colonization, we're gonna go find some people, and maybe it's basically it's a rock. I mean, there weren't any people there, kind of like America. There's not really any people there. There's some brown kind of humanoid shaped things, and but there's nobody there, and so anyway, where am I going with that? So I think, like, but something I was noticing with, like, The Expanse, and this is like a separate critique. I mean, like, I'm not saying that you have to touch on that, but like, The Expanse, like, deals with, like, finding a new planet. There's like a warp gate opens up and people find a new inhabitable planet. I won't spoil it too much. The season 4 in particular. Oh, fun fact: Jeff Bezos, Amazon bought The Expanse between 3 and 4. So you can see that they're buying everything. All the major capitalists are consolidating all their power and buying every IP on the planet. There's only
that's true.
You're gonna have to, like, you want to watch your own childhood VHS tape. You're gonna have to pay Disney for that. Anyway, so but I guess, yeah. So on this planet, like, there's people. Well, actually, they kind of they skirt the whole colonization thing by it being uninhabited, and there's people show up. They're like people from the asteroid belt, and they're kind of like lower class, and then there's the people, like the Earth people, who come later. And the asteroid belt, they get there and they're like mining for lithium, like things that Elon Musk and other nice billionaires are trying to mine for in South America right now. And they're mining for lithium there, but they're mining for lithium on this planet. And then other people show up, and there's a fight over the resources. And as far as I understand it, with Outer Worlds, it's very similar, where it's like there's two uh, parties who are fighting over resources on in a new space. I mean, whether that's a new planet, or it's like, I don't know, the thawing Arctic because of global climate change, because of global capitalism. That now is the theater of war, as Mike Pompeo announced. I was kind of just talking about before we started. Like, it's so similar, like the way that the Arctic and everything above, like, the 50th parallel is like discovering a new planet, in the sense, like, there are people that have actually been up there for a long time, but only until now it's like, oh well, now China, Russia, and America, all the imperial powers are going to be fighting over this land. And I was just thinking about all, like, the resonances between right now what's happening in terms of actual real world capitalism, like kind of like what you're talking about with the Outer Worlds fight over this new space and all of the resources that we can extract from it. And it's kind of like, I remember you talking about how, like, you have to make decisions. Like, there's a point, I don't want to spoil it for everybody, but I mean, like, we may have slight spoilers, but there's a point where you can, like, make a decision to provide power from the power plant to, like, this collectivized kind of like worker co-op or some kind of like more socialist economic arrangement, right? Or you can provide power to, like, the external mega neoliberal corporate hellscape.
Amazon in space.
Yeah, space Amazon. It's, you either give money to space, you give the power to space Amazon, or you give it to, space cooperative or collective, right? And I thought, and it's kind of an interesting kind of like, I don't know where am I going with this? It's kind of like, it's an interesting, like, metaphor for exactly what's happening right now, in the sense that we have, like, there's not necessarily three things happening there, but there's new space, there's new territory opening up, right, in the north. Norway, like I said, Norway, Russia, these areas that were previously mostly uninhabitable by, major capital, are now becoming inhabitable. And then you have these indigenous people that are there that kind of like, well, we want to leave things as they are. We don't want to take anything out of it. We don't want to harvest any resources, because the value of a tree is more in the ground than cut up and selling it off, or we need the salmon, we need the entire planet. And then there's this kind of other there's people that are in between, which is kind of I mean, I don't want to put anybody off by calling everybody settler, but I mean, like, there's the 99% of people who are not necessarily indigenous to, let's say, Canada, right? But who are like, or American, they're like, like a lot of us, like many people on the stream. I'm not indigenous. I feel for them, and I understand. I want to know more about that way of being, but also I kind of like need to pay my rent, and I just want to not be fucked, like you're you're saying, and like we're kind of caught between these two. Not caught between these two poles, but there's these three kind of things happening simultaneously. And I was just thinking about how it echoes, and like, the way that you kind of described, like, and the only solution, well, I mean, to kind of tie it into your discussion, the only solution, I mean, the thing that's bad about not bad, but the thing that's like problematic or unfortunate about the way that it's explored in games, not just this game, I've talked about this before. It's like, there is only solution is a heroic individual, like you, the player, having, coming in and solving like a Deus Ex Machina, it's like Deus Ex player, like coming in and just like flipping a switch, or defeating the bad thing, and then all is right, or maybe all is bad with the world if you choose the evil route, but I mean, at the end of the day, like, like obviously you're saying like what we need is actually like more and it's really hard to find that. It's really hard, and part of it is like storytelling is difficult. It's too difficult to tell stories about vast groups of people in general. Like I was a storyteller, I'm a professional storyteller. I literally like I ghost written for billionaires because they have no talent, because they're little diaper babies. But anyway, and it's like, it's tough though. It's tough to tell group stories. But I will say, Sorry to Bother You did achieve that. So what we need is Outer Worlds with a Sorry to Bother You story or something like that. I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna stop because I'm going on a long time.
No, you're right. You're right. No, like I think the perfect way to cap it off is with this part of my video about Outer Worlds is this very simple sort of idea that I have, which is to, as I talked about when I first got on the stream, this chance to take capitalist realism as like as a very, take it very seriously, which many people do, and to take Fisher's work seriously as sort of like a body of literature, and to the logical thing to do with that is to leverage into other portions of study. And so since Fisher, would apply philosophy and theory and that sort of a thing, I applied it with an historical lens, basically, looking at capitalist realism as indicative of previous ways that people write history, for example. So just as you were saying, and then precisely what I wanted to argue in the video, that these sort of great people, like these sort of like chief protagonists who they don't come in and act like this chief protagonist isn't Lenin. They're not coming in and they're not coming in, they're not fucking Che. They're not like coming in and acting as a conduit from below and then leading. They come in and they solve the problem. That person does. By the way, all the spoilers for this game or whatever, it's like the first 2 hours, and like without even finishing all of the side quests. I think I've played the game for 45 hours so far. So like I think it's probably fine. But the point being that like in the beginning of this game, like where they're like introducing you to the critique, like they really need to like leverage themselves in this moment. Like what do? Well, they put you in a room with a switch and say, help this person or help this person, like, and then okay, bye. And then you leave the planet. You come back later and like do other stuff, but like it doesn't have much to do with the central part of the story anymore after that. It was just this event. And so I thought like, well, what was the point of that? Not a whole lot. And second of all, well, what is that trying to demonstrate to me? It's like, well, if you work in this evil, awful cannery to where people get their body parts chopped off and stuff, and your working conditions are really terrible, if you work for this like horrible, like evil space mega corporation, like you should not try and incorporate yourself among like a scheme of working people. You should not try and organize yourself among other people, nor should the protagonist of this particular narrative be someone who organizes others or who again acts as a conduit. There are a bazillion examples of historical leaders on the left who act as conduits for mass movements of working class people rather than like the protagonist. All that other stuff, it's just it's to me it's such an unfortunate limitation, and video games are the perfect means through which we can analyze capitalist realism because they haven't been around for as long as all kinds of other mediums. So you don't have to like video games have only been around in capitalism. So you it's still important to look back like through discourse and culture and stuff like to see where they sit throughout history. But if we're trying to like see what are the problems of modernity, well, video games are the place to look. And that's just what I want to do on YouTube, to be completely honest. And I'm just gonna keep on doing it also because kind of fun.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just let me know like when you got to go. Let me know. But like I will say like
ASAP.
Oh, you gotta go right now. Okay, yeah, no worries. Yeah. So let's see. I'm trying to think. Yeah. So be sure to check out Labor Kyle. Is that it's the same on your YouTube channel, right? Labor Kyle.
Everything. Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. I want to shout. I know there's a couple of people from my circles of Twitch or whatever. I want to, for those people, if I have not done so already, I want to go ahead and plug a game that you can find on Steam called Neofeud that I haven't had an opportunity to play much more than about a half an hour. We talked about it last time. I played only about a half an hour because I'm at peak points in the semester, but that I've read a lot about, that I've watched a lot of gameplay of, that I find very interesting, that I think is very stylish and cool. And if you have my kind of like offbeat taste or whatever when it comes to aesthetic, this is for you. If you like critique like we've been talking about, this is for you. And anyways, yeah, no, there's a that's the plug. There's the real plug I want to make.
Anyway, thanks a lot. Full disclosure, I'm the creator of Neofeud, so most people from my circle do know that it is and I'm not gonna plug my it is definitely an anti-capitalist game that is informed by I am a fan of Mark Fisher as well, so I'm not a professional theoretician, although I do appreciate theory for sure. So yeah, that's really great. Thanks a lot for that. I really think you should really just, I mean, personally, I really did like the Outer Worlds video. I haven't watched every single video, but I do like I really like the Outer Worlds video. I kind of just give you a little synopsis of that, but watch it for real. Like, that's just the beginning of that. Watch the Happy Few video, and these are, I mean, I'm a science fiction writer and a cyberpunk writer, and my games are more in that field, and dystopian science fiction are kind of all like wrapped up in that, and a lot of the topics and the games that We Happy Few is for sure dystopian, and so a lot of people who would like things that the sort of games that I make, you would probably find a lot. There's a lot for you on Labor Kyle's channel. So I just want to kind of, I'm not saying that because Labor Kyle is nice to me. I didn't pay him like $350 into his Patreon. I swear to God.
300 approximately.
Approximately. I don't have Bloomberg bucks. I only have silver bucks.
If only.
Anyway, so but yeah. So definitely follow, and again, if you are a creator or somebody else of YouTube content, I'm always looking for more people to be speaking to, especially if you're the creators of Disco Elysium. Hit me back on Twitter. And so it's and we'll keep in touch. Maybe when you're finished with your video, your semester, we'll see how things have worked out.
Oh, absolutely. No, and I just want to thanks. It was great when we were chatting on Irene's stream the other day when you asked me on. I'm like, oh hell yeah, easy. It was a blast. Thank you for having me. Very nice meeting people in chat. Who you're welcome on my content, and come hang out. We relax. I'm like, it's almost 2:00 in the morning where I am, and I'm still awake. And this is when we stream. So come hang out. You're welcome. It's very chill and welcoming to all kinds of people. So,
all right. Well, you're not. I know you're going to be editing right now, so we won't raid into you. But yeah. So I don't want to. I want you to procrastinate. I'm going to get the video out for your for all your Patreon patrons for sure.
Yes.
But yeah, thanks again for coming on. Thanks so much. Yeah, it was awesome.
I had a blast.